And we are live, folks, with episode 3343 of the Survival Podcast. Hopefully I won't get confused. I'm actually ahead this week. I'm already working on the show notes for Thursday, which is insane for me. I also have two guests this week, so it won't be a Just Jack show today. I will be bringing Ramiro Romani on in just a bit from Take Back Our Tech and Above Phone. We're going to be talking about cell phone privacy, and we really should say mobile device privacy and security today, because the phone's like the least used part of this. We live our lives out of our mobile devices now. Most people, even like their social media and all, they do way more on their mobile device than they do on their desktop or laptop computers. Not me, because I'm a Gen Xer on the edge of being a boomer, so I spend most of my time behind big screens. Most people, though, almost everything they do is on that little screen, and that little screen goes everywhere that they go. If the NSA is tracking my phone, they think I never move from my living room. That's where it spends most of its time. But for many people, they know everywhere you go, when you went there, how long you were there. And then they are using that data to build dossiers on you, but they're also selling your data. It's despicable. And they're censoring content, and they're censoring technology by kicking people out of their app store. We're going to be talking about all of that and more. And is there a solution? Yes, there is, but I'm not the guy to tell you about it. My guest is. So we'll hold on that for just a moment, and we'll bring him on in just a minute. With that, I want to go ahead and cover our two sponsors of the day for you today. I just thought this was a great sponsor to include today because it fits with what we're talking about. Start9 Embassy Servers, taking back your digital sovereignty at another level, running your own private encrypted end-to-end chat that's not just encrypted, but no one even gets into it unless they know it exists, and you invite them in and you only approve the people you want. And you can do that for your whole family or your whole community with one of the larger servers especially. Host your own stuff. I'll guarantee you our guest is going to agree with this statement. There's no such thing as the cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. Host your images, your passwords, all your important data in a way that makes them accessible from anywhere in the world with privacy and security. Check out Start9 today. It really does help you take back your digital sovereignty. Next up today, the Wealthsteading Podcast with John Pugliano. I just got to spend 4 days in a row with John. It was great. I always love talking to him. John is one of us. He is a prepper. He's a ham radio operator. Now, on today's subject, I wouldn't take his advice because he's a full-fledged boomer when it comes to tech. But when it comes to investing, the man knows his stuff, and he will share it with you freely at wealthsteading.com, where you can learn to grow your wealth the way you would grow your garden. And with that, I want to go ahead and bring on our special guest, Ramiro.
Hey,
how are you doing today, bro?
I'm doing so great, man. It's another blessed Tuesday and just living the dream.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you on. And I kind of feel like you got hosed a little bit by a hole in our filtering process. I met you down in Bastrop. You filled out some paperwork. I was on the road. It fell through the hole. And then we had to kick you out last week because we booked you the week of our anniversary because I'm brain dead when that's going on. And now you're here, but I feel like you're here at the best time it could have been with some of the recent things that have happened with censorship of things like Damas on the App Store. So I guess maybe it all worked out in the end, but I'm glad to have you here today, man. Because
I would rather it be an anniversary than an automated algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I forgot, because there's not an algorithm in my brain. It's just free streaming. But anyway, before we dig into this topic, tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you got into this world of looking into digital privacy and things like that.
Sure, yeah. So again, my name is Ramiro, and in a past life, I was a software engineer. I worked for really large companies and tiny ones too, and I would build mobile apps and web apps. And software engineers, they have this belief that the trajectory of their career at the very top, they're going to work for a big tech company or something. That's literally their goal. And I used to be like that, and it's honestly wild to see how much control these big tech companies have over it, have over the world, and what direction they're taking us in. So I started my transformation a long time ago, but it was really during COVID when I saw everything falling apart. I was living in New York City, working my job, and at that time I saw the whole supply chain crash. Luckily, I was already working with the Freedom Cell Network, along with Derek Rose and John Bush, and I run the technical infrastructure for the Freedom Cell Network. For anyone who doesn't know about that, check out freedomcells.org. It's a way to meet like-minded people wherever you're at in the world. You just type in your city, and you can find local groups, and you can also message members around you. And also, throughout this process, I began to understand the power of technology. We ran Freedom Cells. We saw that grow from 2,000 people at the start of COVID in 2020. It grew to over 30,000 people. I'm sure some of you have heard that before. Then we also started a conference called the Greater Reset. And I would hear stories of my life has changed thanks to the Greater Reset. I've found people nearby, and like we're moving out on land now. And so I realized, like, wow, like technology really has the capability to bring people together, or it has the capability to push people apart, depending on who's wielding it. And so through running these networks, I got to face the other side of censorship. We got delisted off of Google's search engine. We had spammers and hackers try and attack the site constantly. I remember I had to save the site from like several DDoS attempts the day before the conference. And that was one of the most stressful experiences of my life. I was up till like 4 a.m. just sweating, trying to get it done. And, they haven't taken us down yet. So I think that stands for something. And more importantly, it helped me realize how important privacy, security, and the sovereignty of our communication systems are. So I began to learn more and study about the subject. I began to research the big players when it comes to our mobile and our laptop, the privacy on our computers. And I began coming up with solutions, because that's the most important thing. We can't just sit here and complain about the problems and get scared at, the things that we're up against. We got to do things about it. And I tell you what, these people are not as smart, they're not as sophisticated or as hardworking as we can be. So I think there's a lot of hope of that, and I think that mass consciousness is changing in our direction.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's start off with why people should care about phone privacy. I think most people wander around with this device and they know that something's not right. They know that their data is being collected. I think a lot of people are under this illusion, but it doesn't really matter. They don't understand really what's being done. And I think it's twofold. I think it's also about having someone else control what you can see and how you can see it. But let's just start off more from a privacy standpoint. Why should people care about that?
I actually have some visual aids too. If you see my slides at the bottom of the screen, if you want to bring those on.
That one?
Yes,
okay.
That's the one. So before I go into, I always have to do this disclaimer: I'm not giving financial, medical, or legal advice. Always do your own research. I do my best on this research, but things change all the time. And there's no silver bullet. Just keep in mind, Jack and I aren't going to talk about something today that's going to take you off grid. This is all interconnected, right? And phones are just one aspect.
And just for the audience from your end, just remember that there'll probably be more people that will listen to this than will watch it. So try to give some explanation of what the slide is if it's really important.
Okay, you got it. So first, we're going to talk about the scale of the ecosystem. And I think it's just important to see how pervasive this technology is, right? So in my research, I found out there was 7 billion phones. Now, that's almost one per person. Not all of these phones are actively being used. Some of them are just, we're sitting, we have phones in our closet. There's around one per person. And 99% of those phones have software developed by two companies, right? I'm talking about Google and I'm talking about Apple. And these, as we'll see later on in the slide deck, that they have an immense amount of pull. They have a data pipeline coming from each phone. And these phones also have more sensors than any other device in history. So there's this real-time data stream. I'll mention this later, but our phones connect back to their parent servers, or at least traditional phones do, every 5 minutes. Okay, so just think about that. Every 5 minutes, your phone is connecting back, and that's creating a map of you moving across the world. It is when you connect to the radio towers. And lastly, there's not just their phones, but there's this data economy of telecom providers who, they're more than happy to work with the government, and they have to. They're required by law. People who do analytics and advertising within the phones, aggregators who take different pieces of data, they buy it, and they make it easy to search through. data brokers who are actually responsible to selling it to law enforcement, foreign organizations, and anyone who would want to purchase it, and purchasers, of course. So let's talk about the privacy aspect, right? There was an independent study done in Dublin, Ireland, at the Trinity College, where they looked at traditional handsets, right? I'm talking about an Apple iPhone and a Google phone, and they found they're looking at the operating system. Basically, what they did was they pretended that they were Google or Apple servers, and they pinned a certificate that would allow them to see what data was actually being transmitted. And so one, I found that they're connecting constantly, and they're logging large quantities of data. So on the Apple side, it was 52 kilobytes. On Google side, it was 1 megabyte every 12 hours. And every one of these requests contained unique IDs. And that's the really key point to focus on when this happens. You know, these unique IDs are how they associate you, not just in your phone, but through your computer, because these are going to identify you at a specific level. So, for instance, there's the IMEI, which I'm sure you guys have heard about before. If you ever lose your phone, you can report the IMEI as stolen, and that makes it so they can't connect to the phone network. They can't even use that phone in the same way, right? So that's the level of granularity. There's also these in-app analytics and advertisers that are within most of the popular apps you get from the App Store or the Google Play Store, and it's actually crazy how many third parties there are on an app on average. So there's around 11 different domains on the Google side. There's around 2.5 on the Apple side. That basically means they're connecting to a website that's not associated with the app you're connecting to, right? So they're unknown parties. And then there's permissions like location, which are stored and searchable, which we can talk about. You know, we'll talk about like basically how I have structured this presentation. We're talking about like the high level overview stuff too. And then there's always going to be this question is, why should I really care? And we'll get into some real world stories.
Can you talk then maybe about how our phones actually spy on us?
Absolutely. So let's see what I can do here. Yeah, so let's talk about how our phones actually spy on us. So there are levels to it, right? Mostly it's through centralized services. Okay, so this is a good way to put it. So there's one account and service for your entire phone, right? Like for instance, on the Google ecosystem, you've got Google Play services, you've got Google location services, you've got security services, and you've also got the Play Store services. So they know exactly when you're downloading apps. If you're using the location services, if those are on, which on a normal phone, there's no way to turn them off. You have to dig through the settings to minimize the location that gets sent to it, but that doesn't actually change anything. Google can still capture that data if they want. So because of that, because of these centralized services, they're constantly having a stream of data. Now, I'll give you a few examples. So on the Google side, when you turn on location, your location does not get sent off to Google, but when you're using the location service, just in general, when you're using Airbnb or Uber, that's you're getting like a regular cadence. So it's like every 5 minutes you're using it, your location will be sent off. On the Apple side, whenever you turn on location, it's sending your location off to Apple, but not only that, it's sending on the devices on your home network. So like your phone is smart enough, if it's on Wi-Fi, it's sending the local MAC address of your computer, all the devices there. My theory is, you know, Google already does this by driving around in cars, and they're collecting all the Wi-Fi access points, so they have a way to track this. So this is the way that Apple needs to do it. And there's also a bunch of other things. There's like if you plug in the SIM card, your phone number is being sent off. All the unique identifiers to identify your SIM card, all the hardware IDs. Apple goes farther and is tracking every interaction you do in their App Store. But the most important point is like, these are all observations we have to make because we can't actually see what the code does. We have to rely on information security researchers and do our own independent studies. So it mainly happens through this centralized service. And we know that just these two companies, they don't just own the tracking on the phone level, they also own it on the app level. So there was another study done by a collection of universities and researchers actually that looked at the top 15,000 apps on the Google Play Store. And then they looked at these analytics and advertising services within them. So on average, there are 5 different libraries, like software, they're essentially modules of software that developers can put in their apps. I remember when I published my first app, I immediately started getting like notified, hey, include these ads in your app. And you're going to make money for each view. So of course, as a developer, that's attractive. You're like, okay, I want to, I have to make money from this. But people don't realize what's happening. It's so there's going to be multiple organizations like this. And this study was smart enough to look at the top 20 biggest analytics and advertisers. And they found that 16 of those were actually owned by Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, right? Yeah. So they don't just own the operating system. They also own the apps.
It's disturbing. And can we kind of cross then, like, so Google and Apple, within good reason, get most of the beating about the head and shoulders from privacy advocates. But the reality is they're not the only people involved here. There are the other independent app makers, but the one that I think people just forget about is T-Mobile, AT&T, Sprint, et cetera. Like the wireless carriers themselves, they're involved with this too, right?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a big part of my research for this article, Who Can We Call On? And these telecom providers, ever since 1994, there's this law called the Communications Assistance with Law Enforcement Act. And these telecom providers, they legally have to be able to provide your phone calls and your text messages, anything that is cellular communications, they have to hand it over. Some of them go above and beyond, though. Man, I wish I had this slide to show you what it looks like. But, for ever since then, there have been pathways for. So if you look at your call detail records and how long those get held or how long those get retained, there hasn't been any new information on that since 2012. Basically, telecom providers are not telling you anything. And so they'll give you time frames. The last department, I think, was a Department of Justice guidance document telling law enforcement, hey, this is how long T-Mobile will hold on to things. So you would see things from 2 to 7 years, or in AT&T's case, indefinitely, right? And they just the telecom network itself, like when they're submitting these warrants, they're getting your call detail records, but they're also getting the nearest tower. Like they're getting the nearest tower you're making the phone call from. They're getting dates and times. If you're using the internet connection and you're not using a VPN, they're getting what websites you're visiting too. So later on, I'm going to talk about some ways you can protect yourself from this.
And I think people need to realize, like, people say, well, I don't have anything to hide. Well, you probably do. And even if you don't, the problem is that you don't know what they're looking for. And all of a sudden they can say that your phone was in this place at this time and you looked at this website. And that can correlate to something somebody actually didn't have a phone. And it's the same reason a lawyer tells you don't talk to cops, right? You don't, and if you're traffic stop, you give them the minimum. Here's my ID. Here's my proof of insurance. That is, where are you coming from? Man, I'm just heading home. Well, where are you coming from? Well, where are you coming from, officer? Like, you don't tell them because you don't know what they know and you don't know what they're incorrect about. And so even the person that feels like, hey, I don't have anything to hide, you can end up implicated, or you can just end up, hey, it looks like you go to the liquor store once a week. Maybe we need to raise your insurance rates. Because I think you're probably with me on this. I don't trust the providers. I don't trust the apps. And I don't trust the network providers. And I don't trust them not to make my information available to other people, even though there's laws specifically with telecom providers that they're not supposed to do that. But it doesn't mean they don't.
There is supposed to be something called due process.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, actually. So it is, like people, I get this all the time. I've got nothing to hide. why should I care? Well, here's an example that we'll go into. And then there's the aspect of these warrants that they're supposed to serve on telecom. They're typically it goes to due process, but they're also secret programs like the DEA's Hemisphere. So I'd love to Phil. I'm going to tell you more about that, but it's nuts, right? Because there's this layer that's kind of out in the open, and they have to follow due process and do the investigation. But there's also these secret layers that you would not know about, and they try and hide. So, anyways, one of these things that is more of like it's like an open secret is Google's Sensor Vault. Now, if you guys haven't heard of Google's Sensor Vault, don't worry about it, but you're probably on it. Because if you've ever used Google Maps, all of that data is being fed to Sensor Vault. Sensor Vault is a historical geolocation database. Any person or any device that's on Google Maps, that includes iPhones, that includes iPads, or if you're using an Android phone that has your typical Google services, you're included in Sensor Vault. So that happens regularly. And basically, law enforcement, when they get into a situation where they don't have good leads, can pick a date and a time. They can even draw a location around it, as you can see up here in the right. They can draw a circle around the location and get all the phones that showed up in that time. So, okay, but what happens when your phone comes up and you weren't actually there? So this is exactly what happened in 2018 in Arizona. A gentleman named Jorge was arrested for a murder charge. And police didn't have very many leads. All they had was a car, and so a fuzzy picture of a car. So they sent out a Sensor Vault warrant, and it pointed to Jorge's phone. And so he was falsely accused. They took him. He had the same type of car, so they took him to jail. They interviewed him. Jorge had said, "Hey, my stepfather takes my car sometimes." Right? He had mentioned that. So he's sitting in jail. 2 days later, they hear, they're gathering more information. Jorge has an alibi. He was at the movies. He has got Uber receipts showing exactly the minute where he was of the time of the murder. And he sits in jail for 4 more days because I don't know what the police were thinking, but they're so convinced that Sensor Vault data cannot be flawed. They just keep him in there. And it turns out Jorge's stepfather borrowed his car, borrowed his phone, and was involved with this murder somehow. But that's just an example, right? Like, turns out his phone, he would log into Jorge's Google account using his phone. So that's how he showed up in Sensor Vault, and that's the danger we face here with these centralized location services.
And this is exactly what I'm saying there. So this guy didn't do anything wrong that we know of anyway. He certainly didn't do this thing. And even when the police had an alibi, and a very good one, they kept him in jail for 4 more days. And then the person that believes in the system, not to mention probably having a giant brain tumor at this point, but they would say something like, well, see, the system worked. No, wait, you put an innocent man in incarceration for 6 days. He's now got, he's got mug shots and not a conviction record, but he's in the system. That's something nobody wants. And it's all about location data on a phone that honestly, it looks to me like they had no business looking at in the first place.
Absolutely. And there's a real world human impact of this. I mean, this man, he lost his job. His car got impounded. He couldn't go to school. He had to drop out of college. He lost his girlfriend. He's suing the police department for $1.7 million. I hope he gets retribution. And it sucks that it comes out of taxpayer dollars, not from the police departments. But so, I mean, that's just one thing that can happen. And so there are victims of big tech. And, this is what we need to talk about, because we need to see this stuff coming. We need to see it coming in real time. One of the last examples I have will kind of show you how Apple and Google are used to push an agenda. And when you think about it, 7 billion phones, if they want people to change their behavior, they can deploy it immediately like that to that many people. This other thing I want to point out on the security front, these big tech phones are not as secure as you might think. Now, we're talking about Apple iPhones here. There's a scam that's been popular in these recent years where you're in a bar or something, you're having a beer, and someone's looking at you type in your passcode, and they'll run up and snatch the phone out of your hand. All they needed was the passcode. A few minutes later, you're locked out of your Apple account, which means you don't have access to your payments, your apps, your pictures, everything, right? Even your computer at home, you're locked out of it completely. This is centralization. That's the dangerous part. So this year, there's this man, Greg, in Florida, and this happened to him. And he told Apple, I will fly into your headquarters. I'll do a biometric scan. I'll pay you $10,000. Please he has pictures of his daughters, on the phone. Only pictures of his 8-year-old daughters. He really wants those pictures back. Apple hasn't reinstated his account or anything. So, it's like, who really owns the data? Do you, or are you renting it?
Absolutely. And I think, then you bring on top of all this, well, I want to stick to this for a second. So one of the things that makes centralization insecure is the fact that it's centralized in the first place. So if you want to hack into, let's say, my Bitcoin hardware wallet, you have to hack one thing to get one thing, right? If you can hack into a centralized database, well, you get all the things that are in that database. So when people talk about, some crypto was hacked. No, some exchange's database of crypto addresses and things were hacked. Like, the centralization is what creates the security vulnerability. And I don't think people realize that. As long as, if you think of, there was a huge TransUnion hack a few years back. Now, that's not really exactly what we're talking about, but it shows the same risk. As soon as you're in a database with a bunch of other people, you're much more worthy of, let's say, a sophisticated hacker's resources. None of these computers, none of this energy gets used for free, right? Like, it costs resources for anybody, including a criminal, to do this, other than low-tech hacking. Like you said, if I look over your shoulder in a bar, that's pretty simple. But when it comes to, I'm going to be, this idea, we have the shadowy hacker and he's sitting there typing away at the computer. This has all been, enhanced by Hollywood. The type of hacking that's done is uses a lot more automation and probing and things like that. And they don't have the time or the money to spend those resources trying to get to your information or my information as a siloed thing. But they damn sure will expend the resources to get into Bank of America's records or Apple's records or Google's records, because it's a honeypot once you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point about them breaking into these centralized structures. Like, I didn't even have the slide on here, but I should. But malware gets beneath, or gets past Google and Apple all the time. There was this recent investigation where Apple has a bunch of scam two-factor authentication apps, which one of them was actually sending off your 2FA codes, like the actual QR codes, off to a third-party server. And they were pretending to look like another app that was very popular. So how do these big tech companies let that slide past them? On one hand, they say, we're doing this for your security. On the other hand, they have, they're not perfect and they're making big mistakes. Some of the apps some of the malware on the Google Play Store had over 50,000 downloads, So it's just, we got to stop thinking of these companies as God and going with them. There's this other beautiful ecosystem in there as well, outside of them. This is another story that we brought up earlier. And yeah, this is the one that Jack and I first connected over, because I know we're both Nostr users and we like Bitcoin Lightning. And so this Nostr app, for those of you that don't know, Nostr is a decentralized social networking protocol and a messaging protocol. And so it was going to have, this app was going to have Bitcoin tipping. So Apple, with their control over the Apple App Store, they decided that Damus needed to use their in-app purchases. So what does that mean? That means that they need to use Apple's API, which gathers information about the purchase, and also Apple gets a 30% cut. Of course, it's about the money. And so they forced this app to strip this important feature. And now Damus is still on the App Store, but it's missing this really cool feature that I think would be really awesome. I want this, I want this app.
Yeah, and there was a tech workaround with that. I don't know if you saw it now, but you can takes a little bit of finagling. Once you're done, you can now zap again by posting an emoji as a comment, whichever emoji you want for whatever amount you want the zap to go, and it links up with your Get Alby. But as happy as I was to see that, and as much as it was a middle finger to Big Apple, there would be nothing that would stop them from just saying, oh, you figured out a workaround, we're just going to ban you from the App Store altogether. And we've also seen this happen with complete coordination that, in my opinion, makes it a federal criminal offense. Whether you liked them or hated them, Parler is a legitimate social media platform. And, leading up to an election, Apple, Amazon Web Services, Twitter, Google, all conspired and simultaneously deplatformed the whole not just person, but the whole platform itself. So that's a case of the app providers just trying to do what they promised, which is uncensored ability to communicate with each other. And let's be honest, it wasn't even uncensored. It wasn't, in their opinion, properly censored, right? And so they just decided this was too dangerous to their agenda, so they just shut it off.
Absolutely. If it's dangerous, or if other people are doing a better job than they are and their competition, those are both grounds from complete removal from the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. So, what should we be doing? We should have choices for where we get our apps, and I'll show you guys a few alternative app stores in a bit that you're gonna have access to all the apps you want, and also different free and open source apps. So totally.
Before we do that, let's complete the beating of the head and shoulders of the enemy here. So we've kind of beat up on the centralized big tech, as in the Apple and the Googles of the world. We've clearly demonstrated that the carriers do not have your best interest in heart. But what about the app makers? I think that's like saying, what about people? Which app and who's behind it and what is its purpose? Because most of these apps, let's be honest, even if you pay for them, you don't pay very much, and very few of them, unless they're really, really heavy on utility, have a recurring revenue model. So they're not doing all this work and employing all these smart people like you to write code because they like you. Right. So they have to monetize these apps, or they're not worth doing. So I don't think we can trust the apps themselves either without knowing who's behind them and what they do. And I think also a lot of the things that we can't trust the apps with are enabled by the tech companies and the carriers.
Absolutely, yeah. So because I don't have slides on this specific one, I'm gonna share my screen. So I have a few. I can share this part of the article with you.
Okay.
Here we go. So I've got another share going on. If you want to add that on.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So let's talk about the apps, right? So the biggest study that's been done has been on the Google ecosystem, the Android ecosystem. Before 2019, they allowed for apps to gather all these specific IDs: IMEI, SIM serial number, IMSI, hardware serial number. Since 2019, they've stopped letting apps do that. I don't know why it took them until 2019 to do it. The damage has kind of already been done. These companies, are long standing, but just I wanted to put that out there before we talk about this. So there was a study done, I mentioned this earlier, the universities that came together and they looked at the top 15,000 applications on the Google Play Store. About 40% of these had over 1 million downloads. So these are apps that probably you've had in your phone and I've had in my phone when I used to use a traditional phone. And what they were looking at was these third-party advertising and tracking services. So the important points are, back before 2019, they were collecting all of these unique IDs. That allows them to package up that data, sell it to someone else, or even aggregate and associate it with other data. The other important things are, so this is a breakdown of the types of organizations these apps are connecting to. Some of them, you know, it's a website domain. Let's say they're going to analyticscompany.com. Some of them were like that. So those are specifically analytics and advertising companies. So at least we know that that's what they're doing. Well, it turns out a pretty large portion of them were going to unknown domains. So domains that we don't even know. They're not analytics or advertising companies. We don't know what the hell they are. So all the breakdown is here. If you want to check this article out, it's on takebackourtech.org. It's called Phones, Who Can We Call On? And now here's the silly part. So when they looked at, all right, these where are all these analytics companies coming from? They looked at who owned the domains behind these companies, and of course they found out Alphabet owned 16 out of 20 of them, and there was a few parent organizations, and most of them were big tech, right? So we've got Alphabet, Facebook, Verizon, Alibaba, you know, all of these big tech companies that were actually owning the app layer of it too. And so the takeaway here is how do they manage to do this? Because if you look at their privacy agreements for these analytics companies, they say we're never going to share your data with outside companies. Okay, but what if you're a subsidiary of a larger company? And so that's the loophole.
Yeah, the word outside, you know, there's this thing about the law. You have to be precise because the law is very precise. Like that's 101, law school 101 first year. Like the precision of language in a contract is incredibly important so that you can get your client what they want. Not because you want to be clear to the other side of it, but to make sure your client gets what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And to, you know, mentioning what you were saying earlier. All right, so what's the play here? What are you guys doing with all this data? Well, there's a really good article on. Pull it up. So what happens to all this data? This is just one company that's doing it, but at that point, these analytics and advertising companies, they're companies that they're called data brokers that buy this packaged data and they combine a bunch of different sources together. Companies like Fog Data Science, which has contracts with many state law enforcement agencies, federal law enforcement agencies. Here we go. Here's a list. NSA. Oh, no, those aren't it. But this company has a lot of different contracts with these companies. And what they do, they kind of, we mentioned that geofence warrant earlier, right? That sensor fault database. This company is doing the same thing. They want to let you pick a date and a time and see all the phones that showed up in that location. So it's a multi-pronged attack on our privacy.
So what do we do? Like, I know you deal with degoogled phones, so can we kind of start with that? Like, what is a degoogled phone?
Absolutely. Yeah, let me
do you need the other
I'm
one
going
back?
to, if you want to bring the slides back up on screen. There is one more. Do you mind if I share this one story? And I'm happy to.
No, go ahead.
This story is pretty insane. I'm doing like a deeper dive on this. But back in 2021, there was an instance where Google worked with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and they installed an app on 1 million phones without people knowing in Massachusetts. You're either living in Massachusetts or you were passing by. And so they installed this contact tracing app automatically to 1 million phones. And the way they did it, it was hidden and it could not be uninstalled. And it also turned on Bluetooth and it began to see how close by people were. It was using Google and Apple's exposure notification API, that one giant project these two companies worked on together. And so there's a back door on your phone. There for sure is. They have this ability. And so what do we do? Let's get rid of it. So this is what we can do. We can talk about degoogled phones. So I run a company called Above Phone. We're a provider of degoogled phones and software services. And the key thing about our software is it's all open source, right? I'm sure you guys, if Jack's big on technology and open source, you guys know the software is always transparent. You can read through it, but more importantly, you can take it and change it if you wanted to. That's why in the open source ecosystem, you have tons of choice. If I want to pick a mapping app, I have 4 to choose from, not just Google Maps. If I want a Bitcoin wallet, I have like 12, you know? So this includes not just the operating system, not just the app, also the communication methods. And what's really important is that you can install apps from anywhere. And the third thing that's really important, we talked a little bit about, well, we didn't get to talk about Hemisphere, but we know that our call detail records are being logged by many different sources and they're searchable. So we need to ditch phone numbers. This is like a thing that I'm big on. We need to ditch phone numbers and switch to internet-based encrypted communications. And the reason is because I mentioned that CALEA 1994 law, or that act earlier. There's a carve out for internet-based communications, which means that telecom providers are not required to decrypt internet-based communications, right? That's our saving grace within the law. And so these phones we have a suite of services that are all about internet-based comms. And also these phones have no connections to Google or Apple or no centralized big tech services by default. And I've got a little bit of a demo for you. Let me bring the phone back up on screen. See where we are. So we've been doing this for about 2 years now. I'm very blessed that we've got such an amazing response. And the thing we learned was, okay, these degoogled operating systems are great, but they're not complete products within themselves. And I know for me, when I am working on my garden, I don't necessarily try and do it all myself. I go to people who have a lot more experience than myself, like Jack, to figure it out. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to figure out all the different solutions that are required with a degoogled phone. Like literally, guys, we want to make big tech obsolete. All of the services that we depend on, like maps, navigation, media, office, messaging, all of this, we're going to replace it. And we have replacements that you can start using today. Now, so this is the above phone. This is what you're getting. You're getting something very similar to this out of the box. There might be a few apps that we've added on since this version, but I just want to show you a few of the cool apps that we have. The first is very important. It's the app stores we can use, right? So there's something called Appdroid that you might have heard. Appdroid, the requirement to be an Appdroid is every line in your code needs to be open source and also needs to be free and open source, meaning that people can take it and modify it and redistribute it as long as they have the same, they give the same rights to everyone, right? So this is what Appdroid looks like. You can see they have their own versions of Angry Bird. They have a home automation suite. And they have all these really awesome things. There's Bitcoin wallets, there's mail clients, there's compass and navigation apps. Some really cool stuff on here. Like I've replaced pretty much everything. So there's so this store is where we need to start replacing our reliance. Those app developers that we couldn't count on, let's go to Appdroid apps because there's more visibility on these. They have they do much better at telling you about the permissions.
So they might be doing something I don't want, but at least I know it. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, there's a very clear label too here. If an app makes if an app makes connections to third parties, right? So it's very clearly labeled. Okay. On top of that, you can have your cake and eat it too. Let's see if we get this guy to load. This is an app called Aurora Store. There we go. And what this is a privacy wrapper over the Google Play Store. So you don't have to have Google services to get apps from Google Play. This is my friend Rahul. There's company, well, his organization's called Aurora OSS. It was literally one guy who first made this app, and now there's it feels like there's tens and thousands of people that use this. We donate regularly to these guys. So this is a way to download apps privately. It's using a bunch of shared anonymous Google accounts so you can download apps. So you can see that. All right, well, if I wanted, let's see what's a good one here. I'll use this Adobe Acrobat as an example. You can still get the apps you want. And more importantly, now you can audit it. Look, this is a PDF app. It doesn't need trackers in it. We can use the
Because why would it, right? Like, why would a PDF app need a tracker other than that was the purpose of the PDF app to put a tracker in it?
they want to make sure you're staying under your carbon credits, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
So
that has
check
a
this
lot
out.
to do with
Like,
the PDF, right?
you've got all these different companies on there: Google, Facebook, Open Telemetry. So this is good. This is a step forward. You know, I don't hold it against people that they have to use stuff like things like Facebook, but at least be informed. It's all about informed consent.
It's a browser-based app. It's available for Firefox. It's available for any of the Chromium browsers. It's called Facebook Container. And what it does is Facebook sees all the crap you're doing on Facebook, which they would anyway. But when you leave, it prevents them from seeing what you're doing elsewhere. And I don't use Facebook anymore. We stream there because I can do it with a button and never go there. But when I left Facebook, that was one of the last messages I left my followers is you should be using this if you're going to use Facebook. But then you should ask yourself, why does this exist in the first place? And I think that's how people need to look at a lot of these apps that you're showing folks now. The reason this stuff exists is because of what the thing you're using every day does.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get to like, as you use more of these apps and you do a comparison, like, so all these apps I'm looking at, all of them with the exception of one are all from free and open source app stores. That is the promise I want to make people. You can use open source apps and you will be taken care of. You will be taken care of. Not only that, but it's better than big tech. I'll show you some features here. Jack and I, before this call started, we were talking about owning your data and owning your music and things that would make record holders and copyright holders freak out, right? So normal phones, they have DRM, like YouTube Music. You can't even listen to music in the background without paying $5 a month. Here in the open source ecosystem, I can do that using NewPipe. See if I can find the Survival podcast here. So this is a private way to watch YouTube. It's only connecting to YouTube's video servers and nothing else. So it doesn't have that tracking embedded. There's no algorithm that's trying to goad you into watching more videos. And so here's the coolest thing. Like, let's watch Jack's review on fly traps. Now, I can play this right here. I can play this in the background. So I can lock my phone. I can play it in the background. So if you like,
I don't have to buy YouTube Red to listen to music on YouTube, basically.
You don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
And more than that, Jack, you can download it. You can download it as audio. So
that's awesome. That's actually really awesome for me as a content producer, because there's a lot of times that I want to pull some audio, right? Because I want to play the audio, you know, like you hear on the radio, they play 30 seconds off or whatever. And the way I end up doing that right now is use certain third-party tools to strip the whole video down, and then I have to rip audio out of it. So that would be actually a really cool tool that, I mean, is unique to content creators, but there's a lot of us. And that's
absolutely
an example of flexibility. And, you know, there is some things like, you know, I wonder about, like, I'll confess, I'm still on the Apple platform. There's always convenience versus privacy. And there's things that I do that I actually have a workaround for this one now that involves Nostr of all things. But there'll be times that I'm going to need data later and I'm on the fly and I'll throw it into something like Notes. Because then without doing anything, when I pull the Notes app up on my MacBook, they sync instantly. And it may be as simple as something as, for instance, I don't run my email on my phone. So I may need to do something that requires access to email, like a confirmation link or something, because I got locked out of something. So by doing that, when I go back to my desktop, that link's there, right?
So how do you sync that up?
Now is, you know, Nostr in the private messages says note to self. But I just kind of get an idea for people here that are worried, like, about the transition, all these things that they've been using, right? I've been using an iPhone since before the podcast. I had an iPhone in 2006. And so, yes, they have all this information on me, but I have this familiarity. And what's that like for the person migrating? And realize a lot of us are older Xers and boomers, right? So we're not as tech savvy. And I understand what you're saying. I try to stay as abreast of this stuff as I can and not get entrenched. but I get it when we start using words that we understand and the other person doesn't, and they kind of just, it's too hard. I sleep now. Like I can't do this, right? And I don't think this is hard, but I think people need to understand that maybe, like, is there a way to ease into it? Because this is what I've thought about doing. Getting one of your phones and using it, but not with my SIM on my card until I'm comfortable with it. Because the only thing I really need that for is, one, the data that I need to migrate, and two, the phone number. And I don't really care that much about the phone number. The phone really is the least often used part of my phone anyway. But there just is this hesitancy, because I don't think that people that go out and spend $1,600 on the latest iPhone are opposed to spending $800 on a phone that frees them. I don't think it's a financial hurdle. I think it's a tech phobia thing. You see what I'm saying?
I totally, this is something, it's our job to help people through this. And one thing I can say is we're doing everything in our power to make this transition easy. And it is easy. I have 80-year-old grandmas that are sending me encrypted end-to-end encrypted messages and calls and have anonymous phone numbers. And this is accessible. It's never been as better. It's never been as good, as reliable, and as stable. So I do want to say, Jack, like what you were saying is, you don't have to make a switch right away. You don't have to put your SIM card in. It's your freedom of choice of how you want to break it up. And you mentioned that, you're mostly using your phone at home anyway, so you don't even need a SIM card in it, right? Just connect it to Wi-Fi or by Ethernet, which is what I recommend, is more on the health side. But I do want to show you, I was going to show you.
I mean, I have like an 8-year-old iPhone right now that is a music distribution device, right? It hasn't had a SIM card in it since like 2014. Right? So yeah, a phone will work without that if you have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what people miss. And then the cool part is you can even have phone calls using internet-based phone services. And so this is something we run as a part of Above Privacy Suite. And that's a suite of services. It's $100 a year. It's completely optional. But the cool part is you get this encrypted messenger. It's called XMPP. The software is over 2 decades old. It's very solid, reliable. Governments and military have used their own versions of this. Google Hangouts used to be built on top of this. WhatsApp used to be built on top of this. So it's gone to millions and millions of users, but no one has ever pointed to XMPP and been like, oh, this is the thing, because that would give away their money and power. So this has been around for a very long time. And I'm going to show you one cool thing is I can actually make calls like this. So I'm just going to, I know this is a fake phone number. Let's just pick an area code. What's a good area code, Jack?
972.
972. Thank you. So you can simply make a call like this using this internet phone number. You would you can see it looks like an email. That's the XMPP address, but it literally bridges out from the internet to the cell network at one location. That location's in Canada.
It's like LNURL for phones, right? Like, like using an email address for a wallet of Satoshi to send Bitcoin, but you're using it for a phone number.
Exactly. And like, you've got all your features too. You can, it's international. So you can make international calls and texts. People can call you and leave voicemails, and it comes in as like a little playable message, and it transcribes it. So it's a lot better than just a normal phone call. Now here's the kicker. This service is only $5 a month, and you can pay in Bitcoin. So it's completely, it's anonymous in the sense that you don't have to put your information in. Now, as you start to use the phone, and it does go over the phone network, as soon as you start calling your mom and be like, hey mom, it's Ramiro, then of course your identity is, that happens. But still, it's a really awesome tool that I use. The phone number on my business card is one of these. So you can get that with the Above Privacy Suite. And the cool part is too, it integrates with your dialer. So I can dial a number and it'll dial out using that.
It'll do the email thing for me, right?
That's right. Yeah, it automatically does that. So we've got tools like that. And, as far as the transition, like that's been our major goal, is how can we make this accessible to the masses? So at abovephone.com, when you check us out, whenever you get one of these phones, we fold in like a live support call with you. You spend 30 minutes to an hour on this live support call. We have your old phone, you have your new phone. We help you transfer the contacts. If you want to use cell service, you know how easy it is? You just take a SIM card and you put it in the above phone. That's all you need to do. And then, it's activated. It's got that service. We help you get the apps that you'd like, and we teach you how to use the phone. For most people, they get the hang of it in about 3 hours of use. And yeah, so I encourage you to try it. It's now, one thing I was going to mention was these other apps here. I mean, actually, Jack, do you have any questions on like different types of apps that you would be interested in for replacements?
Well, so I'm a borderline boomer, right? So I'm still using Pandora. I got all these playlists and training done. I also I have Apple Music where I can listen to whatever I want whenever I want. Those are the two things that are somewhat important to me. It's probably one of the things I use my phone for the most is to listen to music. I have a ton of music that was like I owned it, even though they say you're renting it, where I actually had copies of it. And that it's been so long with access to these streaming services. A lot of it, I'm not even sure where it is. It's on an external hard drive somewhere or whatever. So being cut off from my music would be like one of the things. And again, the work that I have into something like a Pandora channel that I've been training since 2010, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you know what? That is one of the things I miss most about having like music recommendations.
Yeah.
But this app I've got up on the screen right now. Oh, and by the way, I just want to quickly mention too, we've got a discount code for the Survival Podcast. So TSP75 gets you $75 off any phone. I think I have a slide for that too. I'll bring that up later. TSP75. And so yeah, Jack, thanks for so the music aspect. This is Intertune. Again, it's that same concept where we are using we're connecting to YouTube music servers, but we're only pulling down the music. We're not getting any of the tracking. And this is cool because let's see if I can. Oh, that's a music video. Let's see, I can actually go into this, and I should be able to download it. So that will save to a folder on my phone.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty gnarly album cover. Don't like that very much.
So but you're taking it to another level. You're not just using it as a streaming service now. You're actually taking the audio and holding it so it's available at any time.
That's right. You can take it from your phone. You can put it on your computer. Do whatever you want with it. It's your data. I think in the long run, when you get one of these phones, you save money. And that's the exciting part to me. Is like you're having freedom. You have more flexibility. There's other stuff like that. Like we have a podcast app. You have a podcast, right?
I do. I do. I've had it for a little while now. Just over 15 years.
Here, let's see how I have this. We're on it right now. So this is cool. You can get your podcast on here.
Oh, there it is at the top. That's good. You want to show up at the top for your own name.
Yeah, you'd hope so, right?
Yeah.
So whenever this finishes loading, I can stream all these episodes. I can download the episodes all the way to my phone. See, I've got all the options here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all really cool stuff. And then we've got stuff like navigation too. Now, by the way, just cut me off if you have a question or anything. So this is one app that we use. This is the only app that's not open source on this phone. The only reason is because they use server-side routing. So let's see. So it'll do things like factor in traffic analysis and stuff. But look, this is an alternative to Google Maps.
Now that is using location services though. So is that bleeding some data?
It is. It's using GPS, but it's not using location services.
Oh.
So it's using GPS as a passive protocol, actually. So your phone is getting the satellite location, and it's not your location isn't being beamed off anywhere.
Okay, so it's literally acting like an old school Garmin or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And now here's the cool part too. That app was not open source. This app, Organic Maps, is open source. And this app you can make completely offline. So let's say I wanted to do a road trip across the country. I could just go close to, where I need to go. I can download all the maps on my routes. And then I can actually navigate across the country, and it's using like a nearest neighbor algorithm on the phone. It's not the nearest neighbor algorithm.
Yeah.
It's a specific name for it to route on your phone. And you can have your cellular data off.
But I've created the map, and I'm just seeing where I am on the map with the GPS. So it's like a GPS merged with like a Rand McNally Atlas from 1985.
Exactly. The best of both worlds. That's all I want. Is that too much to ask? So, there's a lot to explore, and I'm happy, Jack, we'll get you set up on one of these. And, I think one of the things I appreciate about you is like you're going to use the tools. So I feel like with some of these, you're going to find a practical use for them. I'm working on that's kind of my mission right now. One of the projects I'm working on is a way to crowdsource maps in your hometown. So like when during the pandemic, they would promote stores, they would put labels on stores that would enforce COVID policies and whatnot. People got really angry. They left bad reviews. They banned those who left those bad reviews. We just need to flip the script.
Yeah.
I want to make a map where it's the stores that didn't follow any of that shit.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And we can do that using these open source apps. So
that would be awesome, because like I do have an app called Safe to Carry. Mm-hmm. And basically it lets me know the businesses that I can do business with where I don't have to disarm myself to go in. Right? I don't have to walk up there and I'll see 3006 and 3007 signs in the state of Texas that say, doesn't matter that Texas says you can carry anywhere now, you can't carry here. And so I'll know in advance, for instance, that I'm not going to the Sprouts grocery store because they don't value the safety of the people that are there, because the person like me isn't going to carry in that store and risk a felony, but somebody is going to go in there and shoot somebody doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. So the best thing they could have is 10 guys like me standing in there if some whack job comes in and starts taking people out, but they don't care. So I don't want to give them my money. So you're talking about like, let's make that universal with the ideals of liberty, that this place doesn't value you and your liberty and your freedom. So, maybe you're stuck. Maybe you have to buy from a Walmart here and there. But if you have an alternative, why not know that it's there? I love that.
And you can put, it's cool because if it's deep, like it's a crowdsourced map, you can put whatever you want on that map. Tomatoes, like shopping supplies. So this is cool. I'll have an article on Take Back Our Tech sometime in August with this. And the last thing too, I know we're going over the hour mark, so I want to leave some time for questions, but I want to talk a little bit about Above Privacy Suite. So these are a suite of software services, and our focus has been universal internet utilities, right? These are important utilities we all use, talking email, calendar, video conferencing. We've found decentralized open source software for all of them, which more importantly works on this Above phone, works on your laptop, works on the browser, and also works on other phones. You can use it on your iPhone. So you're not tied to our system. Unlike Apple, we've helped around 1,000 people, leave Apple and Google now. They don't make it easy to leave. We'll make it easy to leave with our stuff. So this is our email account. It's an @above.im email account. Our email server, we're deleting logs every 48 hours. That's just to prevent DDoS attempts. People try and spam the servers. But yeah, it's an email account you can have anywhere. I mentioned the encrypted chat earlier. Yeah. This allows you to make voice calls and video calls, and the quality is really good. It's better than Telegram. It's better than WhatsApp, which is kind of nuts.
Is that a data-based voice call?
So it uses real-time streaming. So what it does, so this is federated. It's similar to Nostr, right? You have your own your server that's kind of like your email server. It's responsible for connecting to your counterparty's server. Okay. And first they establish the connection, they trade the encryption keys, and then they stream real-time audio and video to each other.
Okay, that's
So
cool because it's basically a VoIP communication, then, right? It's a VoIP, right? It's voice and or voice and VoIP, right? It's voice and
VoIP.
video, right? VoIP. Um, but I mean, I think the reason that's important, I learned something from you the last time we spoke in Bastrop that I did not know, and I felt dumb that I didn't know. And you were saying like data is all we have because we are not permitted as free citizens in the freest country on earth to encrypt our voice communications. But voice doesn't necessarily mean audio. It means voice across the phone networks. I pick the phone up and I call you. So if I'm using some sort of end-to-end encryption across the voice world, I'm committing a federal felony. I think it's in the Telecommunications Act, right? But if I'm encrypting data, I'm fully within my rights as a citizen of a tyranny.
Exactly. And Jack, it's like this big responsibility has been put on our shoulders. We have to get rid of phone numbers, right? How nuts is that?
Yeah.
But we can do it. We can do it.
I mean, we can do it right now. It's just, you got to make sure that everybody that knows how to get you with your phone number knows your new way to get you, because we've had this type of communication available for, well over a decade. I remember playing with the first VoIP stuff so long ago. It had intermittent problems because I was on dial-up. I mean, that's how long we've had this tech, so we can do this.
You just gave me a great idea to build like an app. When you register for this XMPP account, automatically text all of your contacts or a subset of your contacts, hey, I'm off this, join me here.
Yeah,
that's what we need to do. It's like the network effect.
Yeah.
So we've got that. This is so what I just brought up, XMPP, that one you have to register for. We charge for our service because, running a data center costs money, but you can sign up to XMPP anywhere. It's free. You can even run a server at home. So I encourage you to do that if you don't want to pay for our service. This is a service called Jitsi. It's an alternative to Zoom. And so you can hop into a video call and you can just send someone a link. So you can text someone a link, you can email someone a link. You have to log in here. But actually, I can't give the password away on stream. Yeah. But take my word for it. There's a button at the bottom of the screen, and you just send a link. Anyone can join. So they don't need an above phone to join. They can join on an iPhone. They can join on a laptop, right? Same type of concept. There's one last thing, and I think you'll appreciate this, Jack. This is our search engine. This is a meta search engine. It's a software called SearchX NG. And what it allows is, instead of going directly to your search engine, it's a layer between you and your search engine. But more than that, you can choose what search engines. So I've got Bing, I've got Brave, I've got DuckDuckGo, Google, Start Page. I can choose which search engines I want to query. And that way I can, get the most research as I want. Google's censoring some shit. Okay, just turn them off. No big deal.
It's Dogpile. There used to be a search engine called Dogpile that did that. It died in the great search engine wars of the early 90s, right? Like that's when they had Alta Vista and Lycos and crap like that back then, right? And so this is like recreating that using the ones that have survived. And that's really cool because more sources equals more data equals more options.
That's right. And then, one of the most beautiful parts about this whole ecosystem is no ads. You don't get ads back from those search engines. They're not, they can't track you. That's one of the coolest things about this phone. I think that weighs the most on my conscience. Well, the first thing is being able to speak without worrying about microphone permissions because I've disabled them, at the phone level. But also having no ads on my phone. I hate ads. It's something like deep in the core of my being that gets triggered by ads.
Trigger warning. Ad This is pretty amazing. Let's see if we can hit some of the things people are asking about. This isn't really a question. I just wanted to kind of comment on it. Stymie says, SIM swapping scares me, especially in regards to Bitcoin and crypto. You should not be trusting your phone with your Bitcoin and not having any other access to it. And you shouldn't have very much Bitcoin accessible on your phone. That's my opinion. That should be the last thing you notice when he asked me, if there was anything specific I was worried about being able to, I didn't say anything about Bitcoin. Yeah, you might have a couple $100 in Lightning on a Lightning wallet or something like that. But if you're holding, thousands of dollars in Bitcoin on your cell phone, that's wrong. If you're doing that, plus you have not like replicated the wallet somewhere else on another device, that's all kinds of wrong. Like when you set up a new wallet, the first thing you should do, in my opinion, is do a recovery of it on another device to make sure that you've got the recovery phrase right. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I just like that shouldn't be a problem. You shouldn't create the situation for it to be a problem.
This almost shouldn't be a problem. It'll only be a problem for using a custodial wallet like Coinbase or something, right? And your two-factor is getting a text message.
Yeah.
If your two-factor is, you're not a text message, then you're golden. They would need to get their hands on your phone, which is still a thing. But for SIM swapping too, we have a partnership with this company called Afani. Pay attention to our site. We'll be doing an interview with them, and I'll also connect them to you if you're interested. But they have a SIM swapping protection, which is like 14 layers of steps that people have to get through in order to swap your SIM.
Okay.
For me personally,
he's saying it a different way than I thought. I'm glad you brought. So I was thinking he was afraid just to get one of your phones and move a SIM over. He's talking about somebody getting his SIM and moving it in their phone. Yet another reason that you should not have large amounts of crypto available on your phone. And if you're using Coinbase, you're keeping your crypto on the exchange, and you're wrong. I don't generally tell people you're just wrong. People make their own decisions. But if you're holding your Bitcoin on an exchange after everything you've seen the last year, go to your doctor and have them do a scan and make sure you ain't got a brain tumor. Right? Like something's wrong. Like you got to get off the. Paul Revere has ridden by and told you that they're coming, so please get off there. This is more of a general question. Hogg says, when the phone is turned off, does it still send information?
No, in our test it hasn't, and don't take our word for it. There's two ways. You can use a packet sniffer to see if there's any, it's just like a little antenna, to see if there's any data packets being sent off the phone. The other way is using electromagnetic impulses. You can get like a little EMF meter, turn it off, and see if anything's happening. Those are the two ways you can check. We haven't seen anything.
And I don't think you would. I would say, but the exception would be as if you're targeted. I do believe that they can actually turn your phone on remotely, but it's not something you can just do to everybody all the time. But I've also said, like, if you're targeted for some reason, then that's a different world. A lot of things people think gives them privacy. If someone was someone from the government was specifically targeting you for an investigation, there's a lot of things that normally would be very private that all of a sudden are not so private.
They have every tool at their disposal, right? So.
Yeah. Don't ever think you're Jason Bourne, because you're not. Builder Castle says you're like 10th on the list of who owns your phone. I think there's truth to that. If you're talking about access being ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, who pays for it? You do.
Yeah.
Let's flip that around.
Yeah, there's a question about pricing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Builder Castle says, if there was a brand new worldwide net that could be accessed by a phone, what hardware software would you set up to use the new network? I think what he's talking about is like there's a lot of buzz about the idea that we'll eventually build our own parallel internet. But I think we're way off on that yet. There is some meshing going on, but somebody's still plugged into an ISP to get,
right. I think it's a big question that a lot of people like to say, we have the answer to it. But like Jack's saying, it's still relying on the internet. I will say some of my friends in the UK, they're working on BChat, which is first it was quantum resistant encrypted comms. You would have your own radio connected to the phone, then you'd have a repeater. Mm-hmm. They got funding and they're working on something bigger. So it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen in our lifetime. How cool is that?
But don't worry about it, because Elon's going to save us all with satellite internet, and you can totally trust Elon. He'll never put a chip in your brain or give your information to the WEF, and you'll be good. Don't worry about it. It's all
Not
good.
like BlackRock owns them.
It's all good. He can trust Elon. And anybody that ain't figured out that was sarcasm, also go to your doctor and get a brain scan. Anyway, above phone technology that Ramiro helps us use is so far the only one I know of that lets you fine tune your privacy as per app. Google and Apple's are the ones that are asking for all these permissions. So basically what they're saying is like, I can give one app more visibility than another app. Is that what he's saying?
So yeah, thanks, Bajirno. So yeah, exactly. This is like one of the main features of Graphene OS, the operating system. And so you can control every permission, right? This is a Telegram. So Telegram has a bunch of permissions. You can not only control its camera, but you can set up contacts, locations. You can even cut it off from the internet. So we were talking about that offline map app earlier. You really want to be sure you can cut it off from the internet, right? It's on Don't Allow right now. And here's another really cool thing. There's this feature called contact scopes. And I can, so like, for instance, WhatsApp. If some people, a lot of our customers, they live in Latin America. The way of life in Latin America is WhatsApp. I don't know why the hell it ended up like that, but they have to use it. So what they can do, instead of giving access to their entire contacts, they only pick a few. Now, if I go into this, so I can pick, I can pick a few apps or pick a few contacts in there. And now Telegram only has access to those. Similarly, there's a feature with storage as well, photos and videos, another storage scope where I can give it a folder it has access to. Let's use Telegram images, and it doesn't have access to the rest of my phone. So, you get to decide how much access these apps have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's see. This is really not a question about your phones in particular. It's more like somebody watches a lot of CSI. Does using a burner phone with a fake name help with being anonymous as long as you don't sign into any of your accounts?
Now there's a lot of, so it depends on what you're using the burner phone for. Are you using the burner phone to make drug deals and, you switch from one phone to another phone and you're calling the same people over again? Well, if you're doing that, just don't do it, because the DEA figured out how to deal with that over 10 years ago.
Okay.
It's that program called Hemisphere. So 40 billion new call records a day are added into Hemisphere. All the call records. They do this in collaboration with AT&T. Most cell towers are, even if they're not, if it's a T-Mobile cell tower, it'll still use AT&T switches. That's how they're able to do that. When you call and text people, even if you use a burner phone, if you're still contacting the same people, there's probabilities that you're the same person. So they built an algorithm. They called it drop phones. It was specifically to find drug dealers with burner phones. Had a 95% success rate. That was back in 2000. I want to say 2012.
Okay.
You're way past that.
Well, and I also have always told people, like, your end can be secure. It's only as secure as the other end. So you're using a burner phone, but your boy on the other end is using an Apple phone, right? And he's texting his boys that his stuff's coming, right? I mean, they might not instantly know who you are, but they've got to line into what's going on. And that's something, nefarious or whatever, but it could be anything. Like, people always need to realize, no matter how secure your side of a communication is, it's really only as secure as the other side. I use Proton Mail for this. I know Proton is not as secure as they claim, but let's say that it was. If I'm emailing you on Yahoo, or you're really a boomer and you have an AOL address, like, that email communication, no matter how secure Proton is only as secure as your side of it.
Absolutely. That's like the gold standard for me is software that you can run yourself, XMPP, and end-to-end encryption.
Absolutely. So K-Bonk is asking about desktop options that also provide security, because most people are using Windows or iOS.
I'm glad you asked. So I'm doing the same thing with laptops. I'm working on a fully customized and configured Linux machine. It's going to be called Above Book. It should be out sometime in August. And then on our website, takebackourtech.org, we have a whole system on operating systems. And so we have, so install Linux, right? And the same thing we're talking about today with degoogled phones. Linux is the most popular family of alternative operating systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this article called Installing Linux from Scratch to Save the World. All the same principles apply. You have more choices of software. They work better. They usually provide you more freedom. There's no one tracking you. And they're getting really, they're really nice. They're not getting nice. Like I started using Linux in 2015. It had a screenshot tool where you could pick out rectangles. Microsoft didn't have that until like 2 years ago. They're so behind, it's nuts. So you can enjoy a better experience here. So I've got articles and videos on this, and if you want to contact us for more help, you can definitely do that. And again, just sign up to our mailing list on the Above Phone website, and you'll know about the laptops when they come out too.
I mean, I just think overall, there's no way that centralized will ever keep up with open source. Just because the nature of open source is some dude with an MIT PhD is bored. So he's going to like whip something out in the open source. So you get this crowdsourcing and this faster movement. I think that's coming to AI as well. I was talking a couple of weeks ago about how the media really completely mischaracterized the Google memo about we have no moat. And they used it. They didn't say it, but they used it to infer AI was going to get out like the Terminator and kill everybody and take over your computer and attach to your Norelco razor and shave your neck and kill you. Yeah. Like they made it like that. And really what the memo was about is that they had no way to contain the LLMs and that open source was going to take it and do stuff with it anyway, and that they would be better off embracing the open source model, which of course they won't. But the memo made very good arguments for it because that's what you end up with. That's part of why, things like Lightning and Bitcoin are so powerful is because you got some dude in his garage in Oregon and some guy at MIT both working to make the network better. And
absolutely. And they have the same tools, right? It's like going back to the whole going at the grocery store. It's the ultimate equalizer. If we're all on the same page, we can be safe for it. The whole AI thing too, that could be its own topic of conversation, but we need equalized AI because there's a lot of power in it.
Question from Bowillen. Do these alternative app stores have solutions for things like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto? That's something I never even thought of. You get in your car, you plug your phone in, all your apps just pop up, nice little interface with your car. How's that work?
Unfortunately, these are one of the very few sacrifices you have to make. Android Auto, those are all proprietary Google services. The developers of these operating systems have not, developed a replacement. But Bluetooth works completely fine. You can do Bluetooth calls. You can play music, everything you're used to. Personally, I like a good old-fashioned aux cord, so I don't want that radiation in my car.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, but there's no replacement for just using a mount and putting your phone on there and using the app on the phone.
I guess the biggest thing for me to give up there, because I can listen to podcasts or music, and that's mostly what I do. But it's nice having a navigation app up on the vehicle's heads-up display. And I guess you can't do that then?
You can't do that. No. Okay. No. You'd have to use the phone. Use the phone itself.
Okay.
And this is a good point. Like I try and be open about the limitations of the phone. The few sacrifices you will make. No 3D games. This operating system is very secure, so it's constantly like erasing the memory in the buffer, right?
Yeah.
So in a 3D game, you've got a lot of memory going on. So those 3D games won't work. Don't even try it.
Okay.
Then, because it doesn't have Google services by default, you won't be able to use the Airbnb app or Uber unless you install those Google services, which you have the ability to do that. You can even put them in a little jail. You can put them in an isolated container and do it that way. Or what I prefer is you just use the web browser.
Okay. Yeah, let's jump ahead to that real quick here because one of our listeners says, any apps you can't seem to find alternatives to can be set up in sandbox mode, create a user which is completely walled out of the owner profile using Sandbox Google Play services. So basically you got an app, it does things you're not really in love with, but you can put it in its own little jail cell and you only let it do, you give it prison furlough when you need it only. Is that kind of a good way to put it?
100%. 100%. This commenter right here has obviously been through our training program.
Okay, cool. So then let's go back. We have another question here. This is more an opinion question. How does Brave's VPN rate? Somebody's looking for a VPN. I completely endorse using a VPN. Of course, every time you fire up your Brave browser, it tries to sell VPN service to you. Would you consider them a reliable VPN service or not?
I think when it comes to VPN, the most cutting edge VPN protocol right now is called WireGuard. WireGuard is special. This is just the name of the technology. Brave is likely using it. Mulvad is using it. Proton is using it. Before that, the technology was called OpenVPN. But WireGuard is better because it's connectionless, meaning like it doesn't connect to one website and make one request and repeat that. It just sends streams of encrypted packets. Okay. Now, most VPN providers are going to be using WireGuard. Our VPN service that we have on the phone is using WireGuard. You have to make your judgment on the track record of the company. Okay. Brave, there's telemetry in their browser. They do things like if you go to Binance, they used to do this. If you go to Binance.com, it would auto rewrite the URL to go to the Brave's referral link. And it's like, Brave didn't refer you. You're just using Brave browser. So like things like that would make me think twice.
Okay. Just totally unrelated. What's your opinion of the Impervious browser if you have one?
The new Impervious AI browser?
Yeah.
I have not done my research on that.
Okay. Fair enough. I've played with it. I really like the idea of it, but it made me think of it when you said that. And then Bewillum was also asking about things like Waze. So that would be a perfect example of something that I do use, integrated with like CarPlay and all. And the reason I use it isn't just as a navigation app. It's because it could turn into someday my dream Lightning value for value app, because people rat out the police on Waze. The last time I went to Tennessee, it saved me from no less than 4 contacts with law enforcement because I was northbound and down in my Challenger, and the foot gets a little heavy in that car, and seeing the little cop thing pop up and slowing down and waving and saying, "Yeah, he's still there." I dream of an app someday that I'll be able to tip the guy that ratted him out. It also tells you about things like road hazards, vehicles on the side of the road, stuff like that. So I'm a heavy user of Waze. Fortunately, it's not heavy use because it's when I travel, which isn't a lot. But when I'm going long distance, I have that thing on every time because it seems to be worth it, because I don't want any contacts with law enforcement I don't have to have.
First of all, that's $1 million idea about being able to tip the guy. That's a really good idea, and I'm going to try and connect you with a developer that can make that happen.
Okay.
The other thing is Waze is owned by Google.
Yeah.
And it used to be both Google Maps and Waze used to work on the above phone and other degoogled phones without Google services. How funny is that? They used to work fine, but Google caught on and they started to break it and require the Google services. So in this case, you would need to install, that jail we were talking about. Yeah. You can install Google services and throw it in there, switch over and use it.
Okay. So I would only use it because literally I take 4 or 5 trips a year. And that would be when I would use it for that type of a thing. Okay.
You'd have your Pandora and then you'd have your Waze.
Yeah, they would both be locked away and used only when necessary. That's all the questions I got. And let me just switch back over to live real quick and see if there's anything else that came in that's a question. It's just people talking to each other. Dude, this has been really interesting. We kind of mentioned your 2 primary websites quite a few times, but let's do that again now and let people know where they can go to learn more. And then you've got that discount code you can let people know about as well.
Yeah, actually, I've got the slide. It's got the
right here
2 phones on there. Perfect. And I neglected to put the website on there, but it's abovephone.com. And we've got this coupon code for y'all that'll be valid till next Sunday. And there's so many ways to contact us, guys. I know you probably have more questions. We've got a team of real people. It's all people that got sick of the way the system was treating them, and we're building an alternative system, an alternative company. So feel free to call us. you can email us, and we'll be in touch with you. And again, we've got that 1 hour call that you can have when setting up the phone. So we'll take care of you.
So I do want to address something I thought I had started, but I guess I missed it. There was a question about why the prices of the phones seem high. There's a couple reasons. One, these are the same phones in the beginning as you get from a provider if you're buying a Pixel, right? So there's a cost to that. You guys have to pay that cost. Then you have to put time and effort into the modification of the device. So think of it as if you went out and bought a Ford Mustang or a Dodge Challenger, and then you put a dual turbo into it. You're not going to turn around and sell it for what you paid for it. You got to put the cost of the upgrade into your back in the 80s, we had a thing called the Callaway Corvette where they turbocharged the most badass Corvette they could get. You did not buy it for the price you could get it from a Chevy dealership because they did something to it. But then you add in the fact you've got a 1 hour phone call to help you get somewhere with someone that actually, can communicate effectively and isn't reading a script in Bombay or something. There's cost to providing services. And then on top of it, they're not, Above Phone isn't linked in with AT&T and charging you through your phone bill $20 a month in addition to what you paid up front. That's actually going to pay for the phone or something like that. You're actually buying and owning a device that you can turn around and do anything you want to with, from modifying it on your own stuff or throwing it in the river like it's yours. You're buying it outright. Where very few people today, I think, actually buy their phones outright. I do, but I don't think most people do. I think most people go to their carrier, they go to the AT&T store or whatever, and they say, I want a new phone. And, you got to listen to someone that doesn't know how to find their own ass explain to you that there's this plan and that plan and whatever. Just give me a price and I want this much, I want this phone. It never works that way. So you guys are actually selling the device as a standalone item with all of this service built into it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jack, for saying all that. And I think that the reason is because we're trying to be the best. And, there is just the cost of the phone involved, but we're trying to do so much over the top. We're we have articles and videos showing you how to do basic things with the phone. So it's all this stuff costs money to produce it in a nice way that's easy to understand. And I also just want to mention one thing too. This is just a public service announcement, but these phones nowadays, whether you have them on Wi-Fi or you have them on radio, one of the best things I think you could do for your health is use an Ethernet adapter at home. So I'm going to show you one I have right here in my office at home. I have an Ethernet adapter, right? Goes like, you've seen those Ethernet wires. The other part plugs into the phone. So I plug it into the phone, and that way I'm using it without any radiation in my bedroom. And I think this is something you especially need to have with your kids, because I've been doing a lot of research on the effects of electromagnetic radiation. It's not good. We're seeing a very sharp increase in malignant brain tumors. They're called glial tumors from people holding the phones next to your head. Public service announcement: don't do that. Put it on speakerphone. Keep it away from your head. This is invisible danger that unfortunately we're having to face. And this is more than just the privacy aspect. This is about our relationship to technology. So we have those Ethernet adapters available when you're going to check out the phone, as well as the phone case, audio adapters, a little storage device, which basically doubles the storage of your phone, and additional support if you need it. So again, where can you buy a phone with its case? So yeah.
Well, definitely people should check it out. I'll remind you guys again, we're live right now. If you're watching us live anyway, it will take me about 30 to 60 minutes once we say goodbye here in a few moments to get this the stream downloaded off StreamYard, converted over, and published at thesurvivalpodcast.com. And you can go there. There's a link. If you're watching the video in the future, there's a link right down in the video description that will go to those audio notes. And if you click it this second while we're live, it won't work because we're not done yet. But all of the stuff will be there, and you will be able to get to the websites, etc. And I'll add in the discount code again, which is TSP75, valid until July 30th. Get $75. Any of the phones available at Above Phone, and definitely look into doing this. And don't let the fact that you're technologically intimidated affect your decision here, because one thing I really like about Above Phone is the fact that they do absolutely help you with the transition, because there are some changes, and being able to reach out to somebody and help you through and walk you through and handhold you through those changes is incredibly valuable. So, Ramiro, thank you today. This is this is probably one of the more technological shows we've done, and yet still very understandable to the average person. So thank you for that.
Hey, man, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Have a lot of fun going back and forth at the wackiness of the situation today. But, we're together. We're working on solutions, and I have so much faith in the future.
All right, man. Well, thank you, and we'll have you back on sometime, because it's been fantastic.
All right, brother.
All right, folks, with that, I appreciate you all hanging out with us today. I hope it informs you not just to the problem, but to the solution. I've always tried to point out problems and then say, well, here's what to do about it, where I just feel a lot of media out there today, all they want to do is point to problems. People love problems. Solutions always require action and taking additional steps, and kind of going right in line with yesterday's show, some level of being uncomfortable. There's a reason we call them comfort zones. They're comfortable, and using the same device you've used for a decade or more, it's comfortable, even if it isn't the best thing for you. So at least stay open to this and take a look at the phones and what's out there. And the phones that are available, I'll just put it this way. Whatever Androids do, Apple will get to that 2 years later. They're pretty advanced phones, in addition to the fact that they allow you to have all this privacy we've been talking about. Real quick, if you want to support my work and the stuff that we do here, you can always help do that by starting your online shopping at tspaz.com. That's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. And no matter what you buy, if you start there, you will help support us. Today's item of the day is the UTG Ranger Field Bag, same one I had yesterday, but it's still on sale. This is one of the best kind of do anything all around really big bags. I promise you, a smaller framed adult human will fit in there, not comfortably, but they will. Not that I have any practical experience doing it. I do have a funny story about that, but that's for a different day. It is just a really rugged, great bag. I found out because of my connections with the airsoft place down here, because they fill my CO2 tanks for my keg system, that all the airsoft guys, especially young kids that are going and doing these different games every week and need a place for lots of gear and it's rugged, they use this. I've used it to carry T-shirts to trade shows. I must have had 200 pounds of T-shirts shoved into it at one time or another. It's just a great bag, and on sale for under $50. It is a hell of a value, so check that out. And again, remember, you can always support us no matter what you buy if you do your shopping online starting at tspaz.com. Also consider becoming a member of the MSB. We get you guys so many discounts. You definitely, if you use them, it's going to pay for your membership right there in of itself. And with that, I'll sign off. I'm going to catch you tomorrow with another interview show. Then I got something coming for you on Thursday. It'll probably be the most popular show of the week because people like fire and brimstone. And I'm literally bringing you fire and brimstone on Thursday. Expert Council show on Friday. Like I said, we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow with another episode.